Thanks so much for coming to my chapbook launch. I'm really excited. This is my first poetry chapbook, and it revolves around my Chinese diaspora identity. And I thought, what better way to celebrate it than with awesome Chinese diaspora poets. And so I have with me today Yilin and Natalie and Steph, and they're all going to be reading their awesome work. And so we want this to be a pretty casual and personal format, so we will be reacting to each other's poems and asking each other questions about craft and inspiration during the readings. And we'd love for you to join the conversation as well. So please use the chat. Please, if you can, leave your cameras off while the readers are reading. And if there's a line in a poem that really resonates with you, or if you have like thoughts on the poem, please type it into the chat. And make sure that it says to everyone when you send the chat so that everyone can see it. I think that's about it. Definitely, if you have any questions you'd like us to answer, you can also type that into the chat as well. If you want to ask a specific reader a question, you can say, it's for this person, or if it's for all of us. Please be respectful with your questions and don't go like super off topic. Yeah, I think that's pretty much everything. You think I covered it all, Natalie, Steph, Yilin? Anything you want to add? Okay, awesome. So I think in that case, we can start with the first reader, Yilin, and do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you so much, Hal and Newfound. I'm really excited to be here to celebrate Hal's chapbook. She shared it with me, and I really enjoyed it, and I really encourage you to check it out. Yeah, and I'm really excited to be reading with Natalie and Steph, and I recognize a lot of names, so I'm really glad to be here. So yeah, my bios in the chat already, so I'm not going to go into that, but I'm a Chinese diaspora writer currently living on unceded Musqueam land in Vancouver, Canada. And today, actually, I'll be reading some poems that draw on my experience as well, because I'm also working on a chapbook. So I don't have a kind of long introduction, so I'll just start reading. And maybe as I go into kind of the poems, feel free, to kind of ask questions. Feel free to kind of interact with me in the chat if you want. So the first poem I'm going to read is a new poem that I actually wrote recently. While I was thinking about kind of not being able to travel and not being able to visit China because we're in the pandemic. So it's kind of a little bit inspired by that, and it's actually set in my hometown. The place where 3 rivers meet, Yibing, 三江汇合处. My boat drifts towards where the river spirits the Yangtze, Ming, and Jingxia intertwine, a block from my grandparents' apartment, like old friends feasting together, reunited at Flowing Cup Town for an ancient drinking game. The one chosen by the bamboo cup, buoyant as it glides across the serpentine path of water, must weave rice wine poetry on the spot. Echoes pay tribute to generations of verse writers past, their words engraved on nearby cliffsides. Wai Gong told me the origin story of the Black Pagoda and White Pagoda, how nobody knows who started the prank, which pagoda brothers stole the other's hat first. The swap turned bickering siblings into hushed stone guardians with mismatched tops and outfits, reversed on divided shores. They still scheme over how to defeat each other in Wei Qi, the unfinished surrounding game. 700 kilometers away, Yaoji is a swirling dragon, a soaring white crane, the shapeshifter goddess of Mount Wu, transforms from clouds to rain to mist to mountain to cattails. Storytellers have forgotten their name, how she aided Da Yu against the floods. Unable to fly back to her palace home in the clouds, she summons thousands of ravens, ominous leatherwork shadows, to light the way for lone travelers drifting on shaky rafts down rapid riverine. Near the water's edge, my older cousin Dan Dan once counted the seconds between purple jellyfish heartbeats. Only she has seen ghost tears. The last time I said goodbye, I released a butterfly kite, unraveling its spool of threads as its tide wings rose against blooming skies. The kite soared higher and higher, free-falling towards future coastlines.
Oh, I loved all the allusions and the deeply rooted sense of space and like place in that poem.
Thank you.
Since you did refer to like wine and drinking, I was wondering what are some of your favorite foods?
Yeah, I actually forgot to mention that.
No worries.
So thank you for reminding me. I had a feeling I was going to forget something. So already starting off with, yeah, amnesia. So yeah, one of my favorite foods is hot pots. And actually Natalie and I are in a food club together that I started with some of the folks here actually in the audience as well. So we actually, before the pandemic, we often gathered for food as a group. And I'm Chinese, so I really like a lot of spicy food. And for me, hot pot is something kind of that reminds me of kind of community and kind of gathering together. And you can kind of have so many things all at once. And that kind of really has like a celebratory kind of feeling for me. Okay.
That first hot pot, when we go back, it's gonna be so good.
Oh my God, I can't.
One day.
Hey, Jay, yes. Oh my God. Yeah, great. Okay. Yes, hopefully soon. Yeah, okay. So the next poem that I'm gonna read is called Absent. Some of you might have heard of this one before. This was dedicated to my grandma who passed away when I was studying abroad in the UK. So it's kind of about that. That's been on my mind a lot as well, just kind of connections across distances. I noticed that tends to be like a theme that kind of come up in a lot of my work, just because of all the different places I've kind of lived and traveled. So, absent. I'm backpacking in Oxford when Mama emails to say Waipo has departed. In the end, you were the only one missing. The summer I was 6, I returned from America after 2 years away, unable to write in Mandarin, not even my name. Waipo demanded I copy characters until I remastered every stroke of every forgotten word. When I last visited, she was penning a memoir, tattered notebooks she had promised to share on my next visit. Waipo was a survivor who taught girls survival poetry. The night after her death, I muffled my sobs with a polka dot blanket, suffocating tears so they won't startle the lone stranger sleeping on the other side of my hostel dorm. Next day, in Stratford-upon-Avon, past Shakespeare's resting place, I light a candle for Waipo in Holy Trinity Church. Although she wasn't a believer, flames can guide her when the dead return to visit the living. 7 days after her passing, her ghost never appears. Years later, I'm still digging through musty boxes in her bedroom in search of the manuscript she had been writing. Pages missing, their location buried with ashes, not a single fragment of her lost words. No chance for a goodbye I would never say. Thank you.
That was so beautiful.
Thank you.
And I love the imagery of the flame. And yeah, I don't have any other words.
Thank you. Yeah, it's like always like a very personal poem for me to share. So I really appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, so the next one I wrote more recently, and it's also kind of about spirits and ghosts in a way, because Ghost Month kind of just passed, and apparently that seems to be a theme of my work as well. Yeah, so Ghost Month. Why do so many Asians believe in ghosts? 2 white yokai scholars won't stop gawking at us like we're aliens seeing through a telescope. They bait our deceased ancestors to rise up in a parade of their torn robes already stained by the handprints of grave robbers. Demand elegies to be bottled up for a weighing of their heaviness, a test of their misty reality. I must have left my soul in Fondue Ghost City 2 years ago, when I devoured an icy blue popsicle atop the mountain home of Tyee, the underworld. Perhaps it's why I see ghosts everywhere now. A Chinese granny in a bookstore has my late waipo's toothless smiles and stooped shoulders. I trace the spine of the second-hand history she leaves behind on the shelves. Count my breath to check whether I'm dreaming. Each gap between tiny footnotes is a signpost for the names left out. Wild marginalia peeks out from the edges, appealing whiteouts. My transcended kin didn't pass on to have their half-healed scabs ripped open again, paper offerings stolen like plundered heirlooms, trapped behind spotless display windows, far from home. It's much easier to summon spirits than to cast them away. When they're evoked, they'll return without fanfare, and they will feast. A haunting of the unreal living, a haunting of the faithless.
I love the connection with your grandma from the previous poem.
Thank you.
It's a beautiful continuation of like passing on as well, passing on stories and as well as, you know, the other meaning.
Yeah, it was interesting. It was actually a reference to me being at AWP and attending this really terrible panel where a bunch of white scholars were kind of going on and on about how ghosts, do Asian people really believe in ghosts? And then wandering into a bookstore and then seeing like an old Asian woman kind of standing by like a bookshelf. So yeah, it's like a very surreal kind of contrast to have that kind of experience. I know, Jay. Yeah. Okay, and then the next poem I have is actually about food. Some of you have heard this one before. It's another of my favorite foods. It's called Where Are You and Your Fish Really From? Be careful about scams, Mama warned before I left. In China, a fresh catch is often farmed yu, trapped in the Yangtze for a few days before it's fished back out and renamed Wild River yu. When I order water-boiled fish, 水煮鱼, in Celestial Women Town, I don't expect the waiter to lead me and my white American friend to a yu tank, point at one and ask, is that one okay? Slap his slimy scales against concrete. Loud thuds, flopping yu murdered in bright daylight. Crimson proof they're feeding me real, freshly killed yu. Does the yu feel more pain if we choose it and watch it bleed? My friend gasps with horror movie terror, her legs still shaky on foreign soil. I wring my hands. 15 years of Vancouver rain have softened me into a bruised banana, the walls of supermarkets in my veins all bleached, sterile white. Another friend had told me, it's fine to eat animals if you feel enough guilt, if you don't enjoy their tastes, if you don't assign their fates. Buddhists in the past used to fang sen, buy yu from the chopping block, set it free. I could visit a roadside fang-sen stall that sell fish to sinners seeking redemption, but would throwing yu into unknown waters win me yu karma points or bloat the purse of fish catchers. Every day, countless yu are beheaded on both sides of the Pacific. Irie's ghost arrives, whole and naked, its bulged eyes glaring, skeletal head, bony dagger tail, sharp on both ends. A bloodbath of numb peppercorns, in hot chili sauce. Our bellies bulge and explode. We raise teacups to toast the world's tastiest yu. How are we doing for time, Hal?
Oh, I think we have unlimited time. No, but we're doing well. I think we're, oh, sorry, someone else is joining. Yeah. Go ahead and take your time.
Okay, so I have a couple translations. So depending on time, I'll see how comfortable I feel kind of sharing how much of them. But they're pretty short, so I'll just start, I guess. So the first one I have is I've been translating recently a bunch of Chinese poetry into English, just because in addition to being a writer, I'm also a translator, and I think it's really interesting to kind of explore and play with language and kind of try to bring like different literary traditions into English. So the first poem I have here is a poem by Zhang.is, who was a wandering poet in the Tang Dynasty who was exiled and traveling because of war and displacement. And I think it's kind of really reflective of kind of the mood nowadays as well, just because of everything kind of going on in the world. It's called Docked at Night by the Maple Ridge. The moon falls, ravens cry, and frost fills the sky. River maples, fishermen's fires, asleep with heartache close by. Outside Gusu City, the cold mountain temple's bells ring at midnight. To my traveling river boat, the echoes fly. So this is like a 4-line kind of Tang Dynasty verse.
Yeah, that's really lovely. I'm wondering how you do translation like from English to Chinese, because I know you also translate to Chinese and the other way around. These languages are like so different in like the idea of like meter and you know, scansion, like typical poetry concepts. So like, what's your approach?
Yeah, I find it really challenging because I think there are so many ways, you know, to translate and write a poem. So I think it is kind of personally kind of reading it multiple times and then really trying to understand the emotions and then kind of capturing that and then kind of trying to recreate that in English. How I know you also translate a bit as well, right?
I don't know if that counts. I have a failed translation exercise in the chapbook, if that counts. But yeah, it's very hard because also like my Chinese is poor, that it's also like I mostly feel like use it as an exercise to strengthen my Chinese as opposed to like doing a faithful translation, because I feel like it's kind of a little beyond my reach right now.
I think it's really cool though. A while back I shared an essay by a writer and translator called Bonnie Chow, who talks actually about translating from the position of kind of diaspora in terms of being removed because of language skills and not being perfectly fluent, and what that means for translation, and kind of translation as a way to reclaim as well. And also I think translating from kind of lived experience and, you know, kind of personal connections, just because someone is, you know, more kind of knowledgeable about the language doesn't necessarily mean they're a good translator, because people can approach it from more academic kind of clinical perspectives and they're not necessarily, you know, have a personal connection to the text. So we actually need, I think, a lot of heritage translators, you know, working in translation, regardless of how fluent one is.
Yeah, I love that. I would love to read the essay. I think, like you said, us diaspora writers occupy this unique space, and our voice is as valuable as like anyone else's.
Yeah, and for sure, remind me to, I'll share the essay with you. Okay, and I'll share maybe one or two more. So I'm gonna skip forward to one more that I translated as I think a good one to end on. It's by a modern poet called Tyee whose poetry is quite actually well known for kind of, he I think also actually translated poetry into Chinese. So it's interesting for me to kind of translate his work into English. And he wrote this poem called Night Moth. And I hear recently there's been a lot of moths in Vancouver, apparently, giant moths have been showing up. I haven't seen them, but apparently that's become a thing. So, Night Moth. Circling the round candlelight, night moths dance in wretched repetition. These reincarnated spirits from Buddha's kingdom can't recall the insects already dead, the leaves yet to die. Moths are said to be napping kinfolk soaring across steep mountains, across cloudy trees, to soothe us in our misfortunes, or else the dead ones who miss us hold my memories returning from the hushed netherworld. But I perceived them as myself, for their colorful velvety wings had overtaken my shadow, abandoned it in grave darkness. All for one conviction, not a fantasy, but the day I transformed into a phoenix. Thank you.
I love that ending. Yeah.
Thank you.
I guess as an ending question, like, what have you been working on recently? How are you finding inspiration in this really tough time? And is there something like that's going to be coming out in the future that we should be watching for?
It's been really tough, to be honest. I'm sure probably you all relate as well. I was talking to Hal yesterday too and be like, what is a poem again? Like, it's been a while since I've done a poetry reading, like half a year. And also I'm supposed to be like writing and editing so many things, but none of those are kind of happening as quickly as I would like. But I'm finding actually a lot of nourishment just from working on translations and engaging with kind of the work of other authors. And in terms of what I have coming out, I have a short story coming out next year in this magazine. So I'm still kind of revising that, but eventually, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yilin. That was an awesome set of poems. And I think our next reader is Natalie. Natalie, do you want to introduce yourself? Yes.
Hi, everyone.
You're so lovely.
Yeah, I think Newfound's gonna drop my bio in the chat there, but I'm really grateful to be here and to be celebrating this amazing chapbook with all of you. There it is. I'm all those things. I feel weird talking about myself. And I also haven't like done a live reading, like Yilin said, in many, many months. So we'll see if I can remember how to read poetry. That's fun. The big thing in that block of text bio there is that I was lucky enough to win the CBC Poetry Prize back in 2018, which is a national poetry contest here in Canada. And I won it with my poem Arrhythmia. So thought we'd start with that one. It really ties into some of the themes around language that I think we'll be seeing through this entire reading. So this is Arrhythmia. In 1962, my grandparents left China. They stood together on the bow of a ship and watched the only shores they'd ever known melt into darkness, owning nothing but each other and the clothes on their backs. No, I'm sorry. This story is a lie. I mean, at least it might be. I mean that I've never asked how they got here or what it was like in those early days raising 3 boys and a girl in a shoebox house in a broken glass city in a country whose valleys were still haunted by the driving of railway spikes, 1, 2, 1, 2, for miles on end. When I started school, I stopped speaking Chinese. I still know a little these days, can manage phrases like doje and hobao that fall from my mouth and shatter on the dinner table while everyone pretends not to notice. I smile as I pick the shards out of my food, hide them under a napkin, breathe a sigh of relief when the waiter takes my shame away. Sometimes I wonder if my children will do the same. I wonder if my papa feels each stilted conversation like a brick through a Chinatown window, like a slur hurled from a moving car, like 1, 2, 1, 2 for years, for a lifetime, maybe. I miss hearing her call me by my Chinese name. Natalie, she says, each syllable so carefully deliberate as she passes me dishes piled high with chow mein, hand-stuffed dumplings, the best of intentions, and I smile like always, shake my head. Thank you. I'm full. Here is a true story. I was born in 1996 in a mid-sized house in a mid-sized city in a country that proclaims diversity, acceptance. Yes, I am from here. Yes, I mean here. I mean, how do you grieve something you never really loved to begin with? I mean, my grandmother calls me Natalie now. I mean, I stopped speaking Chinese when I started school, so all I know about China is my papa's hands. the distant echo of her pulse, 1, 2, like shattering, rebuilding, like turning foreign soil into survival, into homemade apple turnovers and summer afternoons in the back garden. Because of you, Papa, I have never gone hungry. Thank you for what you have given. Look at all you have made. Hobart, Papa, Hobart. Doce. Thank you.
Oh, I love this poem so much, and I'm so glad I got to hear it live today.
Thank you.
And you read with such a wonderful, like, rhythmic heartbeat.
Oh,
it's very moving.
Yeah, I love how the poem kind of like moves through different moments just so beautifully. Yeah, like I got goosebumps.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I just realized I also forgot to talk about food. So one of the dishes I've been craving lately, for no particular reason, as far as I can tell, is the egg and tomato stir fry, which is like something I remember from like childhood. Maybe I don't even remember the last time I had it, but I was just like thinking about it lately. I was like, I haven't had that in ages. I bet that would be really good. I definitely need to make it again sometime.
I was going to talk about that.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I stole your dish.
No.
All right. Moving on a little bit. I find it interesting to sort of talk about how writers are doing at this time. And the answer for me is not well. I'm not doing well. I'm not writing anything. I haven't for months. And this has sort of put me back in a spot where I was right after I won the CBC Poetry Prize, because that was my first ever submission anywhere. It was my first ever publication, and it was a very public win. And after I won, I was suddenly, after like all the hoopla and the interviews and everything had died down, I was like, what if I can never write a good poem? What if that's it? What if I never write a poem again? And I was sort of in this place of like writer's block and like anxiety and imposter syndrome and all these fun coalescing things. And I was thinking about that. And then I crashed my parents' car going very slowly in a parking lot. It was very embarrassing. Everyone was fine. I was going like 10 kilometers an hour. But I did get a poem out of it, which feels appropriate to this moment since I feel sort of back in the same spot again. So this is called One Poem Wonder. I crashed my parents' car in a parking lot and tried to salvage metaphor from the aftermath. No, Mom, I'm fine. Yeah, I'll be here. Mom, is this a poem, do you think? What can I wring out? What euphonious prose, political genius, rallying cry? Mom, I might be a one poem wonder. A superhero whose only power is burning out early. What if I rip each new work from this ribcage wreckage, temper with heat till the air smells like blood, mold it every way I know how, and it still comes out dead or not alive enough? What then? My parents are too nice about the car. The security guard feels sorry for me. I wait for my ride home, for inspiration to hit, for dull metal jaws to claw something beautiful out of me. Just one more time. Thank you.
I'm sorry you crashed the car, but that was such a beautiful.
I'm also sorry. Oh my gosh, it was so embarrassing. Oh dear.
Such a good poem.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, I was saying it's such a good poem, but also like you had to, wreck a car to it's so hard, but it's also like makes it really personal and powerful because of that.
Thank you.
I just love all the lines.
Thank you. This next one, so in the before times, I spent a lot of time riding the bus because I obviously wasn't driving. And I kind of miss it. I really, enjoyed zoning out and listening to music and sometimes writing poetry if I was in the mood. So this next poem is an older one. It's an ode to public transit. And it's also a love poem, which is exciting because I don't write too many of those, although I did still manage to make this one sad. So this is called Rattle on Home. She told the crowd to raise our hands if we'd ever been in love, and I thought about riding the bus. Warning signs. For your safety, please Hold on, please reach for a kind word, familiar melody, a friend across a crowded room. My hand. Hold on to that. Have you ever been in love? Here's what it feels like, being woken before your stop, or reminded to watch your steps. See these hands? Someone read them for me once, said my lifeline and my love line are the same, said you will understand one day, and now I do. Here are my hands. My shoulder for sleeping, my arm for balance. Have you ever been in love? I don't know if I have, but I am holding on for safety, you know? I'm reaching over you, pulling the cord while you dream a little longer. No need to raise your hand. Say thank you. Say anything at all. We can sit in this quiet and name it whatever you want. Thanks, friends.
I love how you use kind of like the language of like I guess like public transportation, and it becomes a love poem, and I don't know how you did it, but like it works so well.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I literally was sitting on the bus and I saw the sign that says, "For your safety, please hold on." And I was like, "Oh, that's a nice thought." Just like, that's a nice like reminder. And then the poem sort of came out of that over many bus rides. Oh, I missed the bus. All right. Maybe I'll do two more here. How are we for time, Hal?
We are good. Yeah, 2 more sounds
right.
perfect.
Great. So I was at a reading recently where a fellow poet, Manahil Bandukwala, read what she called a cover poem. And I want to do the same thing here. So I have a poem for you. Isabella Wang is one of my favorite writers, one of my favorite people. And I wanted to share a poem from her chapbook, On Forgetting a Language, which also sort of fits the theme of our reading today. So I'm going to share the title poem. It's called On Forgetting a Language. And this is by Isabella Wang from her recent chapbook. I started choreographing in my head again, though it's been 2 years since I've danced, and the calluses between my toes have grown tender. My feet have widened from lack of restraint. My body no longer responds under command to chaner, détourner, développer, like second nature, like a head turning towards grandmother's call every time the telephone rang. The studios I left behind shunned me more than my own family did when I couldn't remember their faces, their names, how to write my own name, how to write our language. My grandmother doesn't know why I refuse to see her. I don't know what my language is anymore. After every class, I lay on the ground, rooting myself in the studio's sprung wooden floors, back sticky from sweat and rosin, legs raised to the bars where I let them hang. I ordered a shipment of 50-point shoes and pounded their tips thin. When they said, "You must feel the ground with your feet," it was pain you felt. Pain was how you connected to the ground, and at home, I shared it with others. Quitting ballet isn't like forgetting my first language. Now my family will not talk to me, and I reach for the studios once more, to the place I learned to express words I could not say as sharp, fluid lines honed against music. Every once in a while, I try to force new blubber into old leotards, gel my greasy hair back into a tight bun, enunciate my name in Chinese just to get a feel of what it once was like. If I return to my birthplace, Jining, now, I will return as a foreigner, like the time I stepped onto this land 10 years earlier as a Chinese immigrant and realized there was no place for my language in this new country. Again, that's On Forgetting a Language by Isabella Wang from her chapbook with the same name. I love seeing all the Isabella love in the chat. She's the absolute best. And I'm grateful to have her words and also to call her my friend. So for this last one here, I guess you would call it an anti-time travel poem. I was thinking about how a couple years ago, like I was in sort of a rough place in my life. And I was like, I wish I could just fast forward to a place where I was like happy and stable and you know, had all these things that I imagined for myself in the future. And I was thinking, I wrote a poem back then about wanting to travel forward in time. And last year I was combing through old drafts and I found that poem and I thought, oh, that's so interesting, because right now I feel like I am in a good place where I feel like I don't want to travel forward in time because I have all these good things in my life now and I don't want to lose them. So this is called The Science of Holding On. It's really about holding tight to the people you love, which feels especially important in this moment. So one last one for me, and then thanks for having me. This is The Science of Holding On. Newsweek tells me that time travel might be possible if we can first locate an object with infinite density. I don't pretend to understand why, but Google infinite density anyway. Learn how the laws of physics refuse to comply in certain places, like black holes, like old memories. Could something like that live here? See the astronauts towing it home on a string, their padded hands placing it gently on a pedestal to be feared and admired, used for the greater good. We might go to look at it on a Friday night, pay an entrance fee to watch the scientists make history obsolete as they shout to be heard over the mechanical drone of their progress. We've done it, they'd say, their faces beaming through bulletproof glass. And now we will see the future. The next morning, my local paper will report the most impressive scientific breakthrough of the 21st century. I will flip past to the weather as I reach for a cup of coffee, reach again to hang a weight on these hands, anything to slow the ticking. Keep the nectarines unripe, uneaten, not soft enough yet to bruise. I am selfish, see? Everyone I love is now. I text, pray, hug, call, check the clock to make sure. Still here. Still here. Still here. Thanks, everyone.
Oh, I just had to sit with that for a bit. That was so wonderful. And thank you so much for sharing today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to hear the rest of our readers. And you, of course.
All right. So next we have Steph. And this has been such a wonderful time of poetry. And I love that we can all step away from the world for a bit and just be in this space together. So thank you, everyone.
Yeah, so hi, I'm Stephanie. I'm really happy to be here. Like everyone who's read so far is like just wow. And yeah, that's my bio. So yeah, I'm a writer from Richmond, which is like in the greater Vancouver area. I'm currently on a gap year, so I will be a freshman at University College London in the UK next year, hopefully in person, depending on how things go. Yeah, right now I edit for Sine Theta Magazine, which is like a literary arts magazine for the Sino diaspora. And I also read for Muzzle Magazine. So yeah, feel free to send poems, short stories to either of those. And yeah, I prepared a few poems and I didn't have like an order for them, so I'll just go with whatever I want right now. Okay. And then I'll talk about food, I guess, after. This is called Year of the Horse. I shipwreck every sunset that frames the city's best features. The bells and whistles of bone, a bit around my breast. My mother's glory has nothing to do with grief. All afternoon, I caramelized my corpse. My bloodline hung as laundry. A prop pistol fired blank. This body stolen out of slow motion. I learned there is no version of this myth where I don't win. At home, a man bruises my mother's face into tapioca. She plucks leaves from the dark, makes tea. I return to her, dirt drunk, miles ahead of every past life where she passes away. We sit for an interview on the study of things faster than the speed of light. I return a blur, my body a blemish of bullet. As she boils the skins off peaches, I ask, have you eaten? Eaten well? Tell me about your day. Are you unwell? Meanwhile, 8 suns drip piss. Screen test, the horizon mouthed over sour candy. Sky caked in smoke that sobs, some story about a saddle. Cut back to home. My mother tapes a peach to the window, tapes this film for repeat viewing. She purchases prayers off Taobao, echoes the on-sale scripture for a God who claims he can outsmart the end of the world. At her request, I present pearls as proof of the millions of moons I outran, pocketed along my teeth. Play along. I was born knowing a thing or two about disaster. Disaster, my better name. The catalyst that calls me home. Disaster depicts my want as wanton. The film reel tunnels red my neck. My mother sobs over a pair of scissors, drowns herself in the end credits. The camera lens carved out of sweat catches it all. Every sun shot down was shot in Technicolor. Every color I cremate reincarnates as sunrise. Yeah, so I've been experimenting a lot with kind of using, I guess, the terminology from like film and like cinematography in my poems, and kind of, because the way I write poems is really kind of visual. I always talk about it like looking at a movie and then just kind of transcribing what I see. And so I kind of wanted to do that more literally in this poem. And I guess on the question of food, something that I have just always really loved is the spring rolls that you get at dim sum. I just remember like when I was really young, kind of going to dim sum with my grandma, like the first few times, that was kind of like my favorite food. And I would always eat it like with my hands, because it was like kind of too big for me to like eat in chopsticks. And sometimes now like it's kind of embarrassing, but like if I take it for like takeout, I'll still eat it with my hands.
Wow, I loved how you make these like effortless leaps between food and family and like film in that poem. Yeah, and I really like the cover of your chapbook, actually, Night Market in Technicolor, and it has all these foods in the background written in Chinese.
Yeah, the cover was done by like a Taiwanese American artist. Her name is Yilin Wang. I don't know her website right now, but like I can drop it into the chat after. Like, yeah, her work is amazing. Yeah, and so this next poem is one that I actually wrote just 2 days ago. And it's called The Sea Goddess Mazu Falls in Love. This time I mistake water for wound, moon for curdled milk. The headlines say the heron harpooned herself into a girl. Here she plays cat's cradle with the power lines, her eyes unzipped from their sockets. I explain, there are oceans we call oceans, women who love women. There are 1,000 ways to debone a body. She listens. Her eyes are rows and rows of dead coral, Victorian shipwrecks tangled in tow. Limerence, our native language. Our bodies, two shrines that flower into sunfish, two synonyms for survival. I fish barnacles from her beak. I am tired of being lukewarm and laced with chlorine. We pretend we are our past lives, the ones I wept into bone, salt sheened in their leaving. Oh, how easily pretty things become mine. How her hymen resembles a jellyfish straddling the shore. In another life, I wear a flood to our wedding, kiss the heron. Yeah, so I've kind of been like delving into, I guess, like Chinese mythology a bit. I didn't grow up hearing a lot of it, but just kind of like bits and pieces from my dad. I remember, I have a poem that I'll read next that kind of touches on this, but my dad told me about, you know, I guess the legend or like the myth of the old woman who's kind of at the bridge, and then she gives you soup where you kind of forget all your memories and then you reincarnate. Yeah, so it's just kind of like bits and pieces that I heard in my childhood. And yeah, and also something that I didn't mention when talking about food. I actually work as a barista right now at Starbucks, and I just started. And yesterday I was at work, and there was another Chinese Canadian guy working who was helping train me, and he was saying like, "Oh, like, do you speak any like Chinese, any Cantonese?" And I was like just a little bit of Cantonese, like to my parents. And then he immediately went like, "Oh, so you mean like you're whitewashed?" Which I thought was like, it was very like, oh, haha, but it did make me think a bit, yeah. Yeah, so this next poem is called Haunt. Late June, the spider lily harvest. Mungpo sutures shut my skin as soup marbles under, a broth that weathers me a body for the breaking. By now my reflection has migrated anywhere but home. Glory, glory to our ghost, she hums. I stare at the red river, make out the last traceable lilt of light, where a face should stare back, heartbroken. I have broken the same body so many lives over, touched myself a legacy of scar tissue and lightning. Even now, I sand my eyes with rainwater, let the scales fall out. The glow of the bridge lassos me forward. Hydrangea vases my throat like a buildable blush. I reach into my throat, its bouquet miscarrying again and again. Blood starved for something that will mean I can love what I will become without ever knowing what. I have the Cantonese for flower, but not arrangement, though that can be arranged in the next life, she says, my heart already breaking in its new body. And yeah, how am I doing for time?
Oh, I don't know. It's just been so amazing. I've not been looking at the clock. You can read as long as you want. Yeah.
What time is it? I'll read one more and then yeah. Yeah, so this next one is kind of about my grandpa. He has Parkinson's, so for kind of like the past few years, it's been really hard to kind of like communicate with him, because I guess first there's like a language barrier, and then also just like physically it's hard for him to kind of just like talk and communicate. So he's at a senior home right now, and visiting him has been like really hard. Like my mom and my sister will like go in the morning sometimes, but and this is really bad of me, but I wake up really late now just because like quarantine and I don't have school. So on days where I don't work, I just wake up really late. But yeah, this is kind of, I guess, a poem where I kind of grapple with not being able to talk to him, I guess, while he kind of could do that like more easily. And so yeah, this is the last poem of my chapbook, and it's, I think, the most personal. Unsent letter to Tulip Manor. Here, where there are no hospitals left to begin in, you are but the idea of water. These last days, my mother cut her tongue on octopus teeth, but you knew that already, don't you? The glass horse you loved too much was sold to pay for the funeral. I licked the green from your favorite jade mahjong set, and this too is no surprise. The way a goldfinch flayed itself between the tremors of your thigh, a box of sunflakes spilled in the memory its only survivor. I want small sacrifices steamed in orange peels. I wanted to cry out the hymn, once hopeful, blameless on your breath. For years I wished for spider lilies, their tender wash. How I revised the definition of lonely just by looking at you. You were saying all these terrible things. Meanwhile, your cheeks a terrible color. Last night, I dreamt of your legs, haloed by spit and slices of alpenglow. Here, the brightest place I can apologize. I won't keep you long. I just wanted to know you. And yeah, those are all the poems from me.
Oh, thank you so much. These are so wonderful. Wow. Obviously, everyone should go get your chapbook, and I'm really looking forward to reading it. Is there anything that you've been working on, or how have you been finding inspiration right now?
I'm actually doing a workshop right now with Richie Hoffman, who teaches at Stanford in the US. But I think kind of like entering the workshop initially, I was like a bit like, oh, I shouldn't even be here because I haven't been writing at all. And writing has been like really hard. Yeah, I feel like not being able to like go out and I guess experience life has like made it really hard to write. So in short, I haven't been writing prior to the workshop, which started just like 2 weeks ago. Yeah, it's been hard. But I've been trying to use that time to just read more. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I hope the workshop is like a good place for you to refill your energy. And I can't wait to read more of your work in the future from this time. So thank you, Yilin and Natalie and Steph. I don't know, I feel like it's a tough act for me to follow. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing your words and your time. And especially thank you to Yilin for connecting all of us. This would never have happened without you. So yeah, thank you. So I guess I should read some stuff now. So yeah, so this is the chapbook, AMNESIA, which is also in this nice, lovely paper form. So this is about the memories that kind of sit with you for many years until they're ready to come out. And it's basically me grappling with immigrating to the United States when I was about 10. And I think a lot of things I just kind of buried and never thought about until it came back in these words and fragments. And a lot of things I sort of had to forget in order to fit in and become American, so to say. So yeah, I'm really thankful to the Newfound team for seeing something they like in it, and then working with me to polish it and bring it to the world. Right, so I'm going to start with the first poem I wrote, actually, that was not on English. And it ended up being the opening poem of the chapbook, which is pretty fitting. So it's actually a visual poem that's centered around a Chinese character. So the poem is all in English, but there's a center that's like this Chinese character, which has two readings and two meanings. So I'm going to try to do this virtual background thing. There you go. Okay. So you can't really see it. So this character can be read as Yi, which means to lose, but also as Wei, which is kind of like to gift or bestow. And I thought that was very appropriate for like the process of immigration, especially parents who lose a part of themselves trying to like bestow something to their children and to like gain this new life. Okay, so this is Loss in Pictography. Unfolding from bird-warm form on couch, another bad dream shakes its night brush shadow puppet. A puzzle. What is one but two? You have one tongue. You have always had one tongue, but the tongue remembers. The twin parasite born of aching sky that articulates itself nightly, sprouting in flooded grass where creatures sing to roll in four secret tones. At the scratch table, mother's finger points to this one. We learned this one with two parts. What is the middle? You do not know. Rich. You know rich? Of course. Expensive. Kui. The left part is radical, like a foot, and how to say leaving. You see? It does not look like a foot. This is Chinese. Pictographic only for the free trial, baby's first 8 characters. Woman, man, heart, fire, land, horse, sun, moon. Now, pay attention, or we'll come back in adulthood, all soundless pictures. Every character has 2 parts, the meaning root and the sound. This one has 2 unparsable lost sounds, plus 2 meanings you can only guess at. To run from fortunes on foot. To leave your house, job, family for a new country. Make new children who cannot understand. This is radical loss. I'll switch back now, okay. Thanks, everyone. Yeah, I tried like multiple ways to present it, and I think this is what I'll stick with.
That's so cool, the double meaning of that character and the kind of playing with that in your poem. I really love that. And I want to ask you about your favorite food as well.
Yes, I was also forgetting. I do love like tomatoes stir fried with scrambled eggs. Yes, Natalie. I thought what was interesting about it is it actually is a very modern dish compared to like Chinese history. Like, apparently it was only in like the 1940s when it became the modern form, because tomatoes are actually native to the Americas, and it was like colonialism that brought it to Europe, and then it slowly like spread to China. But there's a lot of other things I love. I love pork rib soup, which there's actually a whole poem in the chapbook about it, but you have to get it to read that one. I love bubble tea so much. I don't know if it's called bubble tea in Vancouver or like boba or however people call it, but I miss it so much as well. All right, so the next poem, I thought I would read a pair of poems, and one of the recurring characters in this chapbook is Mother, which I'm kind of really obsessed with the concept in general. It's not specifically my own mother, but the idea of ancestry and the immutable things that already exist when you're born that shape your identity, and things that you can't choose, but what you can choose is how you decide to react to it, and you know what parts of your own culture and identity you choose to really interact with, and all of that being sort of the shape of a mother. So I'm going to read a pair of poems featuring Mother. Okay. So the first one is from this Chinese phrase called like 心事, which is literally like heart things. And there's no direct English translation, but it's kind of like something weighing on your mind. So I kind of was inspired by that. So this is Sunday cleansing. Mother says, I can tell you're thinking of your heart things again. They're going to rot in there. So I scrub. The bloody baby stump I buried in a back garden. My teeth throb when I admit mistakes. When I said I would give it all up for you, I was lying. Panic that tides on the loneliest nights. I want to exist after dark. Okay, and the second one sort of kind of pairs with it. This is called Symbol Crash. The reason your chest aches, your mother, her arm too high overhead, a race into the mulch, frankincense, dead insects, unhurried sweet smoke rising to dew to lung sap. She shouts your real name lost in the wooden box. You may fall and crack before your bones say bent, your fluids gravy, whiplash of bygones, door slammed. Please, please, shouts your brain. I want to be whole. I want to leave the box. Thanks, everyone. Let's see, what are we doing on time? I don't know. Okay, I'm going to read the second poem. So this poem is called Poppy, and it sort of holds the collection together. This is where I try to do a lot of wordplay, so the end of each stanza also reacts to like the next stanza, which I'll try to do my best to read. Obviously, it's probably a little hard to get across audibly, but I will try. Okay, so this is Poppy. Hi. This is my new name pressed into carbon paper. The almost hat, almost stroke loop, almost American. Rose, Dahlia, Iris, Lily, Jasmine, all fine names, but not the narcotic flower that made us forget the war. Just ask Father, when do we go back? Mother is not ready for the answer, so I lock it in the future chest. In 19 years, for 2 weeks, then never again. But we see ourselves on television. Plaque psoriasis, friends, accident call lawyer, how to tilt head and distinguish Viagra, Niagara? Fall brings sidewalks to loquat pulp, nay pipa, sour with a foreign name. I played a lute, just like the fruit. Now I play trivia. Fun fact, we have a great flute program, said the teacher. The playground mayor laughs, haha, not haha, when I tell her my Chinese name. First friend says, I heard in Chinese, mother, horse, num, scold are all ma. So confusing. I smile and nod and think, I don't deal in pejoratives. Sawdust and fingerprint crooks, a swapped tooth's benign ignorance obfuscates time skydiving. This is where I sign for life. Female, Asian descent, fingerprint, fee. What are rights in the Declaration of Independence? Happiness, to be dangled 3 times a day as a shriveled carrot after meals. Never seen teeth this bad. Dentist turns on needle. Swelling water, black hair, I am. Rapid faith, swallow steps I was. X, I do swear to renounce what I no longer have. Okay, so This next poem, it was kind of inspired by like the microaggressions that you all get as being like somebody in diaspora. I can see you guys nodding. It's like the thing I get here in the States a lot is just people like vastly combining and confusing all the East Asian cultures, and for some reason wanting to share that with you, even though you don't really did not need to hear any of that. So this is Spittle Thieves. 你爱我吗? No one speaks Mandarin to me unless they're desperate. My tongue has to decide whether to curl with a little effort into a sharper sibilant or lie limp with familiarity. Oh, that's the Japanese word for love. And sometimes it rattles against shut teeth. What's the character for something that's not untrue, yet rings down long in your ear like a thunder slap? There are not many Chinese words in this tongue. There are the foods, bok choy, lychee, even ketchup. But mostly I think of kowtow and Shanghai and brainwash, as if we only know how to deceive and lick boots and make fake tchotchkes and be oppressed and swarm your tourist sites like ants and steal your ideas and jobs and breathe smoke and kick each other in the movies. It's not alone when interest is free.
I love the way you read that last list. It was so propulsive, the way that you pulled us through it, and so evocative, and so, oh, I love that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to say the same. I really love how you performed that and the rhythm of the whole piece.
Thank you. I tried. So I'm going to read a piece that's actually not from the chapbook, but it's very much on theme because I was inspired by a Chinese poem in writing this English poem. So there's like a whole backstory. I guess I'll change it. Yeah, so this is a famous Chinese classical poem, which I can barely read, but what stuck with me was that this is like the classical Chinese form where like you have 4 lines and each line has like 7 characters in this case, but the first line and the last line are the same. And this is done very deliberately to convey a very different meaning the second time around. And if you care, I'm happy to ramble about this like offline. This is actually like supposed to be a very like deep and meaningful poem. But I was inspired to kind of write a poem with the same beginning and end because of this poem. So this is Lapis. Blue were her hands and gaps in her teeth. I spill everywhere when I paint, water and medium, spit and spirit. Still none of it will remain, not like the monoliths of ancients, spat with the sweat of laborers, pulling rope muscle, rope vein. Blue were her hands and gaps in her teeth. Okay, switching back to chapbook mode. Let's see. So I'll read maybe 2 more. Okay, so this one is based on an early American memory, and it's where my family, we were all riding in my dad's secondhand car, and we look outside and the moon is just like enormous. It's so big. It's bigger than we've ever seen it. And my dad said, everything's bigger in America, even the moon. So this is What We Gang in translation. When I walked out of the plane, I did not know what I'd left in the bins. Skin cell, gut bacteria, tongue tips and consonants for broken birds to nurse. There is no return because the world changes color while you linger elsewhere. Molt's light, the sweet lick of flames. Fermented beans taste different from the same jar. Half of me is different too. Melted and recast, a hollow chocolate rabbit, reheated cheese dough. I don't know why the eggs don't steam well here, Mother said. The proteins unspool wrongly in the mirror world gazing. I dream. The gargantuan moon shatters into curds soundless, yellow unlike my vague skin. Stuck in my teeth and folds. Golden money boats to float to the hereafter. All right, last one. I like closing on this poem, and it's pretty different from the other ones in the chapbook. It's a prose poem and I guess kind of a love poem. I don't know, you can decide if it is. Okay, this is dramaturgy. Brazen your lies, scorch off your hairs and mine. I sit up, brush ashes from pillowcase. We should have sprung for the neon lime fire retardant mattress with free carcinogens known to the state of California. I'm not on fire, you shoot. Forehead birthday candle blazing butane blue. The walls are melting paper pineapples. With a full bundle of incense, I could get in a year's worth of generic Chinese prayers. Starting with the landlord taking a multinational cruise, please, but not enough escape velocity to rummage through kitchen drawers of everything. Sure, it would be nice too, to find tons for makeshift s'mores roasting right now. Not enough to leave the bed even. Too tight, too jumpy, the ropes of my puppeteer. Second son, you, grinning to my left. Second son says, admit it, you like it this way. I say yes and explode, ass to shame, supernova, burning fossil fuels, rainbow and gamma rays, all my screams swallowed by your dying star, squeezing our bullshit together, birthing a beautiful black hole hungry. There goes the safety deposit, the cunt county, the rest of the fucking world. Thank you everyone for coming and listening to us and reading.